Welcome back. This is World Talks on TVP World. I'm Anna Kalczyńska. Negotiations on one hand and intensified military strikes on the other. As the second round of peace talks in Istanbul start today, diplomatic efforts and battlefield developments are unfolding simultaneously. Ukraine's security service, the SBU, has reportedly launched a major drone offensive deep into Russian territory, damaging and destroying over 40 military aircraft in one of the largest attacks on its kind. Russia, on the other hand, conducted another deadly attack on civilian infrastructure, targeting Zaporozhye region, injuring at least 7 people and damaging critical infrastructure and residential building. To help us understand the impact of these signals and contradictory moves ahead of today's negotiations, we are joined now by Professor Taras Kuzio, National University of Kyiv Mohila Academy. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us here on TVP World.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
So, with Russia continuing to target civilian infrastructure and killing innocent civilians, most recently in the Zaporozhye region, how realistic is it to expect meaningful progress from the upcoming peace talks in Istanbul?
I'm very skeptical that there will be any progress in the peace talks. I've been skeptical for a long period of time. Vladimir Putin is not showing any signals that he wants to end the war. He still believes, despite all of the evidence to the contrary, that he can win, that he can outlast the West. He thinks the West is weak. He thinks the Europeans are weak. He thinks that Russia will remain in the war longer than the West. And of course, the second most important factor is that Russia sees the United States today as very weak. Donald Trump is providing sticks to Ukraine and carrots to Russia. The threats, which may kind of moderate Russian military action against Russia, are not being applied by the Trump administration. There are very major sanctions. They have been prepared by Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. Senate, but they are waiting for the green light from Donald Trump. So the big question is, why is Trump being so soft on Russia?
Exactly. Obviously, the big news today is the coordinated drone attack by SBU on deep inside Russia, as far as in Siberia. But my question is, what message is Ukraine sending by carrying out a major drone strike that reportedly destroyed more than 40 strategic Russian aircraft just hours before entering negotiations? Why now?
Well, this kind of operation takes a long period of time. The evidence shows that it took at least 1.5 years to implement and prepare for. The decision to do it now, just ahead of these so-called talks in Istanbul, is to send a signal. Let's remember that in the Oval Office back in February, when President Trump said Ukraine had no cards, Trump seems to see Russia as this major military power, something similar to the Soviet Union, and doesn't really rate and give much credence to Ukraine as an actor. I mean, this goes back along, I think, very deep into American strategic and military culture. Let's remember at the beginning of the invasion, American think tanks and American policymakers and the Pentagon all believed, like in Russia, that Ukraine would survive only a few days and before it was defeated. So this kind of image of Ukraine, Trump said, for example, at the time, "Oh, Ukraine has no cards without American support." This is simply not true, and Ukraine was sending a signal that it has many cards. Today, Ukraine produces about half of its weapons inside the country, some with Ukrainian support, some with European support, particularly Denmark, the Baltic states, Scandinavia. And so Ukraine is showing that it's still in the game, that it's not defeated. There is no, despite what Putin thinks, that he's winning. There is no evidence to show that, and this operation shows that Ukraine will continue to innovate and create new ways to defeat Russia.
So this attack was carried out thousands of kilometers from the front. What does it say about Ukraine's current military capabilities and also intelligence coordination?
Well, it shows that Russia is on the one hand a very nationalistic country. It's an imperialist and nationalist country. There's simply no question about that. You can just watch Russian TV and read Russian media every day. But on the other hand, Russia is also a mafia state. It's been called a mafia state by US policymakers since at least 15 years ago. The first time was in 2010. And that means that there are many avenues for outside actors like Ukraine to enter into Russia, corrupt Russian officials. I think that in this case, the Ukrainians used trucks that were bringing in sanctioned Western goods via Kazakhstan. So that whole trade of bringing in Western goods via Central Asia, via Armenia and Georgia, is also another way of entering Russia. Ukrainian intelligence officers have been very good at maybe masquerading as Russians, probably knowing the Russian language quite well. There's also, everybody forgets as well that the second largest national minority in Russia, completely very much kind of disenfranchised and repressed. But the second largest minority in Russia after Crimea, after Tatars, are Ukrainians. And so there are many Ukrainians inside Russia who could be also hired by the Ukrainian intelligence service to do various logistical work in this kind of operation as well. So Russia isn't a kind of a Stalinist a closed entity which is impossible to penetrate. And Ukraine showed this. Ukrainians also showed that although they are the smaller size in this war, they are able to always innovate. And this operation, as many commentators have said, will go down in military history as one of the most brazen and best ever conducted. So it's a question of, if you're the smaller country, you need to continually innovate. Ukrainian society is more capable of doing that than Russian, because Russia's a dictatorship. So it doesn't allow independent action by civil society. There is no real civil society in Russia. In Ukraine, it's a democratic country, and civil society, volunteer groups, including 300 small defense companies, are always continually innovating and staying ahead of Russia in the military game. I think so. All of these factors work in Ukraine's favors.
Oh, it definitely is a remarkable mission, and it definitely proved that Russia is penetrable. Some point also to the fact that this attack was carried out very close to the Kazakhstan border. But Volodymyr Zelensky outlined key goals to the peace talks, saying first, a full and unconditional ceasefire, second, the release of prisoners, third, the return of abducted children. So also in the order to establish a reliable and lasting peace and ensure the negotiations, there should be preparations on the meeting at the highest level. How much of this negotiation position is achievable today? And do you believe that Vladimir Putin will sit at the table with Zelensky?
Well, I don't think Vladimir Putin will go to Istanbul, and that means that President Zelensky will not participate directly in the talks, because he would only participate if there was a US and Russian presidents there. So it will be conducted at the level of foreign defense ministers, intelligence services. The Ukrainian and Russian positions are 180 degrees different. Russia wants the destruction of Ukraine. Russia sticks to the position it held in spring 2022. It uses this phrase always of dealing with the roots of the war. By that, it means that Ukraine cannot exist as Ukraine. Ukraine can only exist as Little Russia, as a kind of a Ukrainian version of Lukashenko's Belarus. And that means that Ukraine has to rescind, cancel all legislation dealing with culture, education, language, religion, and those kind and memory politics, all of those kinds of areas, because those make Ukraine Ukrainian, and Ukraine is not allowed in Russian eyes to exist like that. So I just simply don't see how both sides can come together on this. The only way that would be possible is if the United States did implement those tough sanctions prepared by the US Senate, and maybe the Russian position therefore would moderate, not completely change, but at least moderate. And at the moment, Russia is not being pressured. And even in the case of the European Union, for example, the European Union over the last 12 months has given more financial money to the Russian budget by paying for energy than it has given to Ukraine in terms of humanitarian and military assistance. So even the European Union here has not completely cut itself off from Russia. So I think there's potential opportunities to apply greater pressure on Russia, to try to moderate its position. But at the moment, Russia's sticking to the hardline position. Ukraine cannot exist as a Ukrainian state.
Thank you so much, Professor Taras Kuzio, Professor of Political Science, National University, Kyiv Mohla Academy. Thank you so much for your insights, valuable insights to this morning, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for watching World Talks. Stay tuned to TVP World for more coverage.